Okay, hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to the DFM podcast. And on this one, I have Mark Gordon with me. He's the composer and CEO of Scoredraw here in Belfast in Ireland. So, Mark, if you'd
Yes.
like to introduce yourself, you can be as brief as you want or as descriptive as you
Okay.
want. It doesn't really matter. You don't no time limit on it, so up to you.
Okay. Yes, I am Mark Gordon, and I run, I guess, like a music production company. Music production house is what friends in America would call it, called Scoredraw Music. So at the moment, there are six of us who work, and the company does music for, I guess, primarily kind of animation, children's media. But also, as with everybody, bits of film, television,
Hmm.
advertising, and we're doing our first game at the moment as well. So,
Cool. And I was just wondering, what kind of got you started off in general when it comes to music and composing, and then leading into sort of starting up Scoredraw as a company as a whole instead of sort of doing freelance composing, really.
yes. I was in bands when I was younger. Like many people. And I was in a band, and we were on a German record label and publisher based out of Berlin. And our publisher got two of our pieces of music synced onto some band music, um,
Okay.
synced onto Sesame Street and Malcolm in the Middle.
That's two
Uh,
very big sinks at the time, that is.
yeah, I know, it was kind of amazing. We had a really, like, it was an indie publisher. It's kind of small deal, but he had the kind of foresight to see that our music would kind of maybe work, towards, it was kind of like interesting, like the family, children end of the market, I suppose.
Mm.
And that, and if I'm being completely honest, I didn't massively love doing tours, although we were very lucky to, we toured a lot in Europe and,
Hmm.
went to America and whatnot. And at the same time, I've been living in Belfast and doing other bits and bobs. And I knew some people who worked in television here. And I had a friend who was starting to do bits of presenting and work for a local independent production company, and kind of got me an in with an editor. So obviously I didn't go to Berkeley. I didn't study. I just, but I had a home studio set up at this point, which is probably like 2004, 2005.
Okay.
And um, so in my home studio, I wrote about 17 or 18 pieces of what I thought was like television underscore music. So really, really just like instrumental, 2 minute cues. I didn't even have a sense of kind of like production music or library music or anything like that. Um, just kind of like instinctively, like what would sit beneath what their output was at that time, which was kind of Northern Irish reality, fly on the wall TV
Yeah.
content. So stuff that would need, like, for a 6 part, 30-minute series, they might look for like 15 or 20 bits of just kind of underscore.
Hmm.
So I pitched these 17 or 18 cues to this one company, and the editor came back and he was like, 16 of them I don't like, but I like this one. And I was like, okay, it's like the door is open like 1 millimeter. Um, and so, and then I was like, oh gosh. And I didn't really think of myself as being like a composer. And I was like, oh, I should like have a company name, which is like Scoredraw Music, which is what I came up with. And then, so for ages and for some years, it was just me. And then I started taking on people on placements, job seekers on placements,
Okay.
um, through a company who was kind of looking at kind of people wanting to do more work in the creative industries. And a guy came on placement, who had left school, didn't want to go to university, and was signing on. And then his placement ended, and he was like, "I don't want to leave." And I was like, "Well, there isn't really a job." And he was like, "Well, I'll just stay." And I was like, "Oh, I can't really, like, I'm not going to ask you to stay and not be able to pay you any money." So I was like, "Okay, so what is your bus fare?" Because he was living with his parents. I was like, "What is your bus fare to get to the studio?" He's like, "Okay, it's like, £1.20." I was like, "Okay, and how much does like a Tesco meal deal cost?" And he's like, "Okay, that's like £2.50." I was like, "Okay, there is literally no money, but I will pay you, like, so that it doesn't cost you any money
Yeah.
to kind of come and hang out in the studio. And then that kind of became a sort of job, and then other people will come in and do stuff, and then we get kind of more work going on, and then it just kind of grew. And I know in the composing community, the way it tends to work is you have this kind of structure that is a bit like kind of this, which is like you have the composer at the top, then you have like assistants that are here and here, and maybe they're kind of getting cut into the equity of the songwriting or whatever, or maybe not. And then you could have like ghostwriters and stuff like that. And it's kind of like, it's not even like a pyramid. It's like I don't know, it's like the eye of a needle or something. And what we've done in the company always is like, we've had like, it's almost been like this. So if we're working on anything, we tend to write in kind of collaboration within the company, because I'm trying to answer your question in a really kind of long-winded way. I suppose it was just that because I come from a background of being in like bands and stuff, I was used to being in fundamentally kind of collaborative environments with a group of people working towards something, as I said, as opposed to this kind of like, here's your, whoever, Zimmer, and then all the assistants and all the stuff. So it became a kind of company or like a collective or something. Because it was kind of born out of that thing of like being in bands and just being used to being in collaboration with people. And everybody's different, but it definitely suits what we do to work in this way. So that's why it sort of became like a group of people.
So it just really came, and you kind of just got composing basically from those two syncs, really. That's what kind of got you composing.
Everybody comes to this in different ways, and it is hard to imagine in 2020. But at that time, it was much more a niche thing, and because in the music industry was still in this sort of slightly post kind of Napster sort of spin out situation. It wasn't as if lots of people were looking towards sync for revenue streams, really. And it wasn't as if there were a lot of people going, oh, so, composition could be a thing that it did. So it's sort of, it happened in a very kind of like accidental way. The validation of having bits of music that I had co-written working to picture was enough of a kind of jumping off point to be like, okay, maybe I should try doing a bit more of that, when it was kind of combined with that thing of like, I just don't really enjoy getting in the van anymore. So it's interesting because I think for a lot of people, like, I think everything is a lot more gray now in terms of people who are in bands or composers or doing production music or kind of doing all this sort of stuff. But I suppose, and this would be something that I would completely believe in, it's like, if you can get sync work, be it for like a production music library album that you might do that ends becoming, a piece of underscore and, whatever, MasterChef. That kind of, you can use that as kind of leverage to open up conversations about composed work, because as I said already, I feel like it validates that the kind of sounds and the kind of emotion that you kind of can imbue within your music can resonate when laid up to picture. So in a way, it was actually a long time before I started actually writing to picture. In many ways, all the early stuff that I was doing, especially kind of like, factual documentary stuff, you don't do any work to picture. You just, you supply the toolkit, and then you maybe do bits of tweaks, and then you maybe do a titles thing where you have to kind of mark a couple of moments or spot a couple of things. But actually working to picture came a lot later for me.
And I suppose the syncs show that the music is good. If someone thinks the music's good enough to be synced in the first place, it's showing the quality in the work for a director or a game developer to look at them and think, well, it's good enough to be synced here, so they're good enough to write music for my game or film, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, I think so, and I completely agree with that. And it's interesting how, often I think in kind of like in pathways in kind of education, kind of tertiary or secondary, for people who are looking at kind of doing composition work, is that it's not they put the horse before the cart, but they focus a lot more, I mean, for obvious reasons, on the physicality of working to picture. But it would be it would be interesting to kind of see if you did a kind of breakdown of, artist as in band sync, production as in library music, and then original bespoke music actually work in the picture,
Hmm.
that would be quite a small percentage, really. I know in advertising, it's, yeah, it's a really small percentage. So it's like a slightly different way of looking at it, I suppose, because most people, the presumption is to work in media as a musician, that that's the first skill set that's required, is actually the ability to understand if this turn happens at 1 minute 8 seconds, you have to mark that through music.
Hmm.
That comes actually quite late in the kind of development that you have as a composer, I think.
Yeah, and like I find I had a person, Dan Brown Jr. on this podcast recently. I went up,
Yes.
and yeah, and he runs Crime Sonics, which they recently got nominated, I think, for 8 Emmy Awards or regional Emmy Awards. So he's doing quite well at the minute. But he was even saying, like, on his roster of composers, he has fully fledged like composers that have big names for themselves, but they're just going under different names. I'll say be Score Draw would be their name for writing for Crime Sonics, but yet they're Mark Gordon for themselves for writing the picture. And a lot of composers are still apparently writing a lot of library music to try to just pick up back end royalties and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, this is, I think, one of the, what you're kind of touching upon another big sort of chicken and egg thing, which I just viewing again when people are kind of emerging as composers and starting to kind of get traction and stuff. It is so hard to work out whether it's better to be completely awesome at one thing and kind
Mm-hmm.
of market yourself that way, or to be kind of like, I can sort of do anything, but feel like, but that's like me and another million people.
Yeah.
It's very like, so I suppose, I think there are a lot of composers who quietly do library albums as well, because if you have the studio and you have the setup and you've just finished a season of whatever, or feature documentary or something like that, and you're not on your next gig, or you've been flipping, production's been halted for 2 months because of someone's got sick or whatever, you still, if you have the studio, you can make the music. So why wouldn't you do library or production albums?
Mm-hmm.
But then some people would see that's like, oh well, that's kind of like, that's not the art.
Yeah.
I mean, we wrote a bit of library music for Sky a while ago, and we really enjoyed it. But it's not something that we've come back to. Equally, if there was a point at which we're kind of between projects, we'd absolutely look at production music, and because I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
There are people there who are just and obviously you've done previous podcasts, trailers and stuff as well. So it's
Yeah.
kind of funny. I don't think production music. I think definitely historically, people had real kind of stigmas about production music and library
Yeah.
music,
Look
and I
down on it
think
to an extent.
really in the last, like that doesn't exist anymore. I don't think.
No, I don't think, like, I see it just as creative, whether you're writing to a brief or if you're writing to just a fresh scene of a film. Like, fair enough, yeah, the brief might have a few more pointers for a composer to kind of hit, but there's no one saying in the background of, if you're writing a score to a film, that director has been secretly bullet pointing every single thing that the composer should nearly write for the actual score, and he actually hasn't been as creative as maybe has come across in the actual music itself. Like,
Yeah, I think that is true. I think it's like many things. There are many misunderstandings about how this part of the industry works, and even to kind of try, even within the kind of the range of work that we do, to try and define which work is the most creative. If creative means that the composer, is either given the most free reign, or given, does creative mean the composer, like you get the least notes for something, or yeah, other situations where you find that you produce some of your best work because the director has been surgical about
mhm.
what they want. But that in my mind kind of speaks to the sort of DNA that a composer needs to have as opposed to a songwriter. I kind of often said this, that I feel that, they are in many regards two very distinct skill sets, to the extent that, you don't give Bon Iver notes. You don't be like, here, mate, second chorus, really think you need to come in quicker, or, you know, I don't know. It's, you know, it's like we've written some of the best music ever, and had it, you know, looked over and be like, oh, we think you can do it again,
Yeah,
and you just like brush yourself down.
yeah. It's a completely different world it can be, really. And it's
Yeah,
interesting when you look at it as well. Even yeah, like I'm not sure what it is like with songwriters. Just works aren't really questioned to an extent. You just take it, either you kind of enjoy it or you don't. Where with compositional works from from like a composer or something, people just have no problem here, like just trying to throw tweaks here and tweaks there, and can you change this? Can you change that? Or but if a songwriter writes a song, it's just really, oh, that's the song, kind of that's it to an extent.
but I think I mean, the thing that I would say is always, because to be a songwriter is about kind of, it's about innate expression of emotion, you know, whereas to be a composer is to work in collaboration towards an idea that you were not part of the gestation of, but that
They're
you
there
were
to
there to
enhance and
support.
help. Yeah, yeah,
And again, like, and again, even like the fact that we are kind of, you know, a company of composers and whatnot, as opposed to, you know, as opposed to just like a single composer, you know, I find that I work at my best in collaboration with other people. Some people, you know, there are many musical auteurs who, you know, who will, you know, go to the cabin in the middle of nowhere and write, you know, their record, and, you know, and it will kind of emerge kind of fully evolved, and
yeah,
then go into the public domain to be sort of consumed in, like, in the raw, you know, whereas what we do is kind of the opposite of that. It's completely iterative. um but we kind of enjoy that. And
yeah.
actually, you know, in as much as doing something it's difficult to get notes back and difficult to kind of tweak and amend things, also kind of like respect, you know, that notes and things that come in, especially in kind of animation work, it's because we're there to support the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our role is kind of, it's creative and it's about expression and it's about kind of joy and stuff, but it's also, I wouldn't use the word mechanical, but it absolutely needs to support
Yeah,
like narrative beats. Um, yeah,
yeah,
especially working in content that's going for like a young audience, like a preschool audience, or like a 3 to 5, or a 6, you know, 6 to 8. You know, it's, yeah, it's very, you know, you have to be very kind of prescriptive about how you kind of write the music and support what's going on screen.
yeah. And I think that's one thing that a lot of composers kind of don't get when they're starting off. Like, there's one or two Facebook groups out there that are good, and they sort of offer challenges weekly. They'll strip the music
Yes.
off clips and give them sort of challenges to groups to compose. And if you now, I'm not bashing on any composer, because everyone's picture of it, like, if a scene can be different and you can compose, but you do watch some of those scenes and think back, you've just completely missed the mark. And it's because, like, either you've just gone with the, like, I'm not sure what it is, like, even on some of the channels, like, director points are actually given to help the composer, but even still you just either go with wild instrumentation out of it, just completely doesn't support the dialogue or the picture that's on screen. And just like, it's a big learning curve from just writing music to then write into an actual picture, actually realizing what you have to support.
And I mean, if you kind of imagine that it's like that for like a film or a scene of film or a scene of drama or something like that, when you kind of distill content like that down to, you know, an 11-minute animation or a 7-minute animation or 5-minute animation, um, which is being consumed by, like, you know, quite a young audience, then every part of that storytelling process needs to hold the hand of the viewer through the process. And if
Mm-hmm.
in music you're not supporting that journey, then you're kind of failing as a composer. So, you know, it'd be easy example would be that, you know, 1 minute 10, something seemingly innocuous happens on screen. For example, I don't know, you know, a dog walks into picture in the background. Um, and you know that at 4 minutes 30, that dog is going to have a kind of pivotal role in helping a character in a moment of reflection when something's going wrong. So you know, you have to work hard in the music you're writing to kind of like signpost, like, oh, there's a dog, we might see that dog again later, that could have something, you know, it seems to just be innocuously walking across the air, but actually we want to kind of mark that in some way that means that there'll be an echo later on, when that reappears, that you kind of planted a little seed. And this, in animation work, you do a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in kind of, preschool and young animation, you're kind of navigating, the journey of a script and a kind of, what's happening in a really short amount of time, with multiple characters, and trying to just kind of like trim out the white noise and walk the audience member
Mm-hmm.
through the kind of fun of the story, whilst using music, explicitly to support that.
Yeah, so that was actually kind of one thing that I was looking to get onto, and it is sort of your work within Score Draw on animation, in particular for the kids animation. And what do you find would be one more challenging than scoring to a regular, maybe even as a regular picture, not even library music, just a regular scene? And is there anything that you actually find sort of easier in the aspect of scoring to TV, sort of like children's animation?
I think that I mean, it's a really interesting question. I think working in animation and working in animation for very young audiences is it's kind of like a completely distinct way of writing music. I mean, you'll know the phrase kind of Mickey Mousing, which is when
Yeah.
you basically, you follow kind of every single moment that happens on screen, and the music is sort of continuous. And I wouldn't say that we, in the work that we do, we go that far, because that's kind of stylistic thing, and it goes back to kind of silent films and whatnot. But certainly, it's not unusual if we're doing an 11-minute episode for something that, when we come to doing the cue sheet, we could find that there's like 35 or 40 cues in 11 minutes. Now, some of those will only be a kind of 3 or 4 second spot, but in 11 minutes, you might find like 9.5 minutes, 10 minutes of music. So you're constantly working within, 20 or 30 second windows as the scene is happening, with 3 or 4 people, working out which point of view the music should be supporting, which point of view is less important. Are we supporting the main character because the story is about her and it's to do with kind of, I don't know, a cupcake making machine that she's invented that is going to explode and leave her in a situation of peril? Or actually, are you supporting her little brother because at the same time there's a kind of secondary story that's happening about the fact that he's got a new skateboard with a really kind of annoying horn on it that he honks all the time, but actually he'll end up in a situation whereby he makes kind of music out of that, and that could be something kind of joyful and could have a kind of a creative learning aspect to it as well. So you kind of, you're making loads of decisions across 11 minutes, loads and loads and loads and loads, and writing tons of music. And even though, I mean, the interesting thing about animation is obviously it's, you talk about the kind of horse in the car and music and picture. When you get animation, it's locked. It will have no music on it apart from any songs that you have written, which you've obviously written and recorded with the cast, 3 or 4 months ago. So there might be kind of melodies or themes that you can mine from the songwriting that you've done. But apart from that, it's locked. So if you have a great cue and it's 127 BPM and it hits this beat and hits this beat, but doesn't hit this beat, it's not as if you can go back to the editor and go, here, listen, can you just cut like 6 frames out here? Because actually I've got this great piece of music going and it just doesn't land here.
Yeah.
The biggest kind of thing about writing for animation is workarounds for when you have to do a long cue with lots of markers and the markers are arbitrary. It's not been temp scored. There's no temp scoring in animation, or very, very, very little. If there's ever temp scoring, it's just to kind of help get a sense of the, I suppose, the kind of pacing of a story. So if you have a montage scene, you maybe throw a bit of temp music in just to go, yeah, kind of like that feels sort of okay. So you're faced with this cut, which is immovable. There is, there will not be one frame added and not one frame taken away. And you need to hit all these narrative beats that will come at completely arbitrary points. So it is extremely highly, I don't want to say highly skilled, but it just requires a completely different way of working to kind of working in any other genre, because you just have markers all the time. And then the second thing as well to mention then is that So animation is commissioned in kind of large trenches. So, for example, this show that we're working on the second season of at the moment for PBS Kids, which is called Pinkalicious and Peterific, the first season was 80 episodes, so 80
Oof.
times 11 minutes. So we were on that for about, I think, on and off for about 3 years. Also, it had 40 songs, and for each song that we wrote, we had to do 2 submissions. So we wrote 80 songs for season 1. So we're now in season 2. It's another 52. So another 26 songs, but we'll be writing 52 songs to get our 26 that will go forward. It's going to be probably like another 2 years. And obviously that's in kind of one lane where we're doing other stuff as well. So it's kind of, it suits the setup of, you know, a kind of team working together, because these are long commissions, you know, and in some ways, for some composers, I'd be like, oh, that's amazing. You're working on one show for 3 years. But then the flip side of that is you've got to kind of approach episode 80 with the same kind of enthusiasm and kind of vim and vigor as, you know, the episode that you wrote like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So for some people, they find, you know, that can be kind of like mentally hard. You know, it's kind of like, okay, let's, you know, here we go one more time, you know, plus 80 songs. You know, it's kind of like, it can be really big trenches of work
It's a
that
lot
can
of work.
feel, you know, and when you're in the middle of them, you're in episode 54 of 80 and you're 2.5 years in, you know, you've just, yeah, there's a certain type of kind of fortitude as a composer that you need to have, because if you kind of think about it, these are kind of you know, £1 million productions with, you know, 80 or 90 or 100, 150 people in all these different pipelines between kind of like art and audio post and, you know, scene prep and acting and scripting and everything. And music just has to like drop in constantly, and it can't hold anything up. If it starts to hold things up, then things start to buttress against. So you know, that can be bad. Unfortunately, we've never been in that position where music's kind of held up production, but it's definitely, it's a really unique part of the industry. It's kind of amazing as well, but it's not for everyone. But it is for us.
No,
It's a long answer.
no, that's fine. I completely agree with you saying that. I would say it's a skill within itself. Like I've challenged myself to try to write the animation cues before, and they are not easy at all. I find them quite difficult, to be honest. Like now, one thing I do find interesting about them, I actually think there's a bit of, you get to use a bit of instrumentation that you might not get to use on sort of normal sort of scenes. Like you get to just a few more playful sort of instruments, and woodwinds I feel sometimes have a lot more involvement in animation
Yep.
style stuff. But it
Yep.
is, like, I completely agree with you. Like it's really, really challenging, and it is a tough skill. But you were mentioning about commissions.
Yes.
How do you find? Do you get to work with live players much? Like, are budgets good enough to where you can get a few live players, or do you just try to get them in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that, you know, we've done, it's interesting because we've done scores for kind of kids TV that have been sort of done all live, but more like small band ensemble, like, you know, like banjo and ukulele and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, fretless bass and things like that. But when it comes to stuff that's more orchestral, then we tend to just bring in, like many people, we would just bring in kind of top line players.
A
So
soloist,
we
yeah, and
did,
just fill it over.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we did a thing for a show for Disney Junior called Claude. Amazing, beautiful, awesome show that kind of, the art in it to us kind of spoke back to kind of like 1950s and kind of Peanuts and Snoopy and 60s and sort of soul bass, and it had a kind of limited color palette anyway. So whenever we started kind of doing our first mood boards about what we thought the music could be like, we were pitching that kind of like Henry Mancini, you know, jazzy 50s, yeah, you know, Pink Panther, also things like the opening cue to Catch Me If You Can,
Oh yeah.
you know, all that kind of playful jazz stuff, and, you know, lots of piano, and lots of trumpet as a kind of key instrument. So in Claude, we did a lot of stuff out of the box, and we set up a good template that we worked really hard on, that was like a completely stereo kind of virtual stage as a jazz ensemble would have, with, you know, the drummer here, the bass player here, and whatnot. And then we would bring in our trumpeter for each episode, and we would record her. doing, doing all the lines that we'd written for her. And
And how many episodes
that,
did you say
like,
that was? Five.
was it,
How many
was that?
episodes did you say that was?
Oh, it was 52.
So
52.
that's a nice bit of work for the trumpet player as well. That's a big
Yeah, and
amount
it's
to play.
kind of like funny because, well, it's really interesting because, yeah, she was a sister of a friend. She's a primary school teacher, and she had played in the Ulster Youth Orchestra and whatnot. And this was definitely like a new thing for her to do this. But because she was a primary school teacher as well, she kind of got, she got what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, it was cool for her. So, like, absolutely, whenever we can bring in, top line players especially, and vocalists obviously as well,
Yeah.
vocalists. And then we have, we've been lucky to do, we recorded with the Ulster Orchestra for a film that we did with, and that was amazing. We've done a couple of those things,
Mm-hmm.
it was like a 60-piece orchestra and a 30-piece choir, and it was kind of like overwhelming and
Yeah.
fantastic. And we try, and everybody in the studio as well has kind of different skills. So Richard is a grade 8 clarinetist, so we'll use that whenever we can. We just did a short film last year, animated film, and we used lots of his live clarinet, and it really made a difference. It really kind of cut through. And as you know, I mean, there's kind of like, there's a lot of stuff that works really well out of the box, and then there's a lot of stuff whereby it's sort of transformative
Mm-hmm.
to have somebody live playing. So, I would feel less inclined towards, I don't know, bloody pizzicato strings, in terms of stuff that we do. It's like, stuff that we got in the box, pretty good.
Yeah.
But if you want an amazing legato clarinet line to just sort of like drift around
Yeah.
a cue, it's kind of like, it's way better to get somebody to play it live. But it's also a budget thing as well, because we pay everybody who records with us as well, and we kind of just got to be, everybody would like to use more players. But yeah, we do. The answer is yes, we definitely use live players whenever we can, and it makes a massive difference. Yeah.
And then just overall in the animation in general, because as I said, you came from a band and went writing some cues as library music. Where like I was on the Score Draw website, and you've worked with a lot of top like kids programs, like you said, Disney Junior, Nick Junior, CBBC, like
Yes.
lots of top like kids channels. Like, where did the actual just the kids animation just come into things? Like, did you just suddenly decide I actually really enjoy children's animation TV, or where did it come from?
So I'll tell you exactly the way it worked. So here's what happened. So I used to run, so on Saturday nights in Belfast, my friend and I used to run like a club, like we would DJ and stuff, and would bring bands to play and whatnot. And it was kind of like an amazing thing that we did for about 10 years called Ski Buddy. And we always used to have friends of ours who were in bands doing the door. So like taking the money and stuff. And it was, it was like, the 1 week it would be this person, next week this person. And there was this girl called Anna who is an animator who now works for Cartoon Saloon and has worked in lots of different things. And she's a bass player in this awesome band that we loved. And she was doing the door, and she said, "Oh, I'm working on this film." And I was like, "Oh, do you need any music for it?" And she's like, "Don't know, but maybe some sound design and maybe some music." And actually, you should talk to David Holmes, awesome composer from Belfast, and Dave was going to give her some music. And I was like, "Oh, well, we'll do some music as well, and we'll do the sound design in the mix." I had no idea what that meant. No idea. I virtually had to Google what that meant, because this is like, I don't know, 10 or 11 years ago. But worked it out pretty quickly, and we did all the sound design, and then it was co-funded by Northern Ireland Screen, which is obviously the screen development agency. And so she had been, as a kind of early doors animator, she had been assigned kind of professional exec producers who had worked in the industry more. And when they were in, they mentioned they had a series that was in development for RTE Junior called Joe and Jack. And I was like, "Oh, we would love to pitch for that." Like having never done any kids work. We're like, "Oh, we'll do a pitch." So we did a pitch, and we wrote some music, and I did like a PDF and this whole thing. And I kind of like talked about kind of like 70s children's music for animation and stuff, and 80s. And I thought really hard about it, and we got on really well with them anyway. And so they were like, "Okay, we're going to give you a go. You're going to get the gig." I was like, "Oh my God." It's a 39-part series for RTE Junior. amazing, because we've done like, bits of factual and final and all this stuff, but this is like a kind of game-changing thing. So we did this series, and boy did we learn as we went, but we got notes, and everybody involved in the production was amazing, and lots of people who now work all across animation, the industry in Ireland worked there. And then so we had that, and then a friend of mine introduced me to a guy called Colin Williams, who runs a company called 16 South, and they had this show that they were in development and trying to get going, which is called Lily's Driftwood Bay. So I met Colin, and like he showed me the Bible and talked to me about the music that he wanted to make. I was like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. So again, we wrote lots of music, just like on spec. Just, I'm a great believer in just like writing music. Just like if you want to kind of start the creative conversation going, you can obviously send people your reels or do things, but if you feel like things are kind of moving forward. So we made this mixtape for Colin and for the creative team, which was, it was like 10 or 15 of our tracks, and then our 10 or 15 tracks that I just found. So it was stuff like the Staves, or there was a couple of Cat Power songs, and there were some other kind of like modern folk songs, and it was just like a mood board, like a kind of 3-dimensional mood board, and then chat, and then eventually it's like, okay, do you want to do the music for this? It's a 52-part series for Nick Jr. We're like, oh, yes. So that was amazing, and we ended up doing 2 series of that, and in the second series we wrote songs for Dolly Parton, and Colin and I went to America to record her. She was a guest voice in an episode, and that was the kind of, so Joe and Jack was the one that we got because someone used to sit next to me, and we used to take the money at the club that I ran. And then 16 South and Lily's Driftwood Bay was then like, wow. And then it just kind of went from there. So
snowballed, really.
Yeah, so we just kind of started pitching other people. I mean, it's another thing about kind of doing a company thing, is that like I go out to the markets. I mean, I don't at the moment because of the stupid virus, but I travel and go to all the kind of kids markets and meet people, and I like very much, I suppose, like I love that part of the industry. I love being in it. And kind of keep going, and that's it. So it was all, that's the other thing. It was all like local stuff. This was it's like Nickelodeon or Disney Junior, but it's co-produced in Belfast or in Dublin or in London. So it's kind of like the sector is really close to all of us as well. It's not as if it's not kind of like out of reach. So yeah, we're so lucky in Ireland to have, I mean the totality of Ireland, north and south, to have like an extraordinarily evolved animation sector, producing content, obviously, that is going around the world, that is winning all the awards. It's an oft-used cliche, but we punch so far above our weight in animation and animated content. It's just like a brilliant part of the screen media industries in Ireland, and there are brilliant people who are working within it.
That's great. Well, then one last thing that I want to sort of ask before I let you go, because I don't like to keep people too long, because I know people are quite
That's
busy.
all right.
I know, yeah. What else we doing? But still.
Yeah. That is one thing, specific to this kind of situation that we find ourselves as a world in at the moment. Animation is one of the parts of the sector that is like absolutely trundling on. It's not as if
you don't need live people to record it. Yeah, that's true.
I tell you what, the only part of animation that requires people to be sort of in the same room is kind of voice recording. But even in the last 2 or 3 months, there's so many workarounds with kind of like podcast mics and sort of remote recording stuff. Actually, once you've got your voices, you can cut your boards to them, create your animatic, put it into production. Everything else is done remotely. So it is like.
So are you still kicking by then? Basically, you're still going.
Yeah, we're on some jobs at the moment, and we're extremely, humbled and grateful and happy to be kind of, Pinkalicious, we do an episode a week of Pinkalicious. So yeah, it just rolls on.
Actually, another question kind of came to mind. Does every composer within ScoreDraw work on each project? So all 6 of you is on like every one?
No, the way it works is there would never be more than like 3 people I think, usually on a project. And that could be, well, in terms of composing. So for Pinkalicious, there's kind of two people who compose, which is myself and Richard. And then there are two people who work on the songs, which is myself and Fiona, because Fiona is our amazing in-house kind of songwriter. So then on something else, it could be Charlie and Richard. They're kind of taking the lead on the game that we're working on at the moment. I've written a bit of music, but not very much. Or there could be, just did a thing for BBC Bite Size where Mary did a lot of the kind of songwriting for that. So it's rarely more than kind of three people. And the good thing about that is, and this is like really important, especially in animation, especially in long animation projects, it's kind of like everybody benchmarks everybody else all the time. So in Pinkalicious, I'll do some writing, and then maybe Charlie will produce it, and then we'll kind of share the episode, and then Richard and I will each do notes, and then we'll kind of do like another production pass, and then we'll send a kind of, like, okay, here's like, here's version 1. Or so everything, there's a lot of kind of quality control that everything goes through before we let anything out the door, because there are kind of 2 or 3 people working on anything. And that is really important when it comes to big projects, that you don't, if one person has maybe missed something and somebody else be like, 8:23, I think I noticed that actually the cupcake exploded in the background. We probably need to spot that. So yeah, it kind of means that you just, I think you kind of, it puts a lot more rigor into your kind of writing and production process when you do it, with other people, which is good.
You mentioned actually you're working on your first video game. Is that everyone within Scoredraw's first video game? Because obviously when it comes to writing video game music, that's a completely different beast altogether when it starts becoming middleware and everything
so
involved.
It's our first big, we've done a couple of small things, but it's our first big commission. Unfortunately, and if Charlie was here, he would say it himself, Charlie spent a lot. I mean, he probably spent a decade being like a super engaged gamer when he was younger. So he's very into kind of like understanding, kind of vertical integration of music and kind of making, as you say, the way that you kind of upload audio assets for a game is so completely distinct. We're very lucky to have somebody in-house who really gets that. And specific to this game, it's about young, it's called Paleopine, it's about young dinosaurs, and there are going to be all these kind of things to do with music and sound and calls and things that the audience have to learn. So we've been, sort of plugging in old Nintendo controllers and kind of triggering the sounds of flute and stuff from them. I have to be honest, this is stuff like I could never do, but Charlie has been writing some kind of, I don't know, not code or whatever it is to kind of like make the samples do what we need them to do for the game.
That's where the collaborative team idea kind of helps again, like.
Yeah, and like understanding how to vertically integrate the music and using the kind of, whether they're, I can't remember if they're writing in Unity or what they're writing in, so how they need the music assets to kind of move from us to there. Yeah, it is a completely different thing. But again, fortunately, we have somebody in-house who, he can see the matrix and will be able to kind of deliver our kind of assets. And we've just got somebody new in who's on a placement for 6 months called Heidi, and she's a really keen sound designer for gaming as well. So it's been like absolutely kind of serendipitous that she's coming in and she will kind of lead on that, and that'll be awesome for her as well. So yeah, we have it covered.
So then the main question I was actually going to come to was, I couldn't let you go before sort of talking about Output and your involvement in that, because I got to go to Output this year for the first time, and once I can make, I'll be going every year after this one, because the experience I found as not even being a composer like first, but this year studying my music business diploma was actually kind of what brought me up in the first place. Through Aaron Casey, my publishing lecturer.
Oh yeah, Aaron, who's like does stuff at Output and is brilliant.
Yeah, so he basically sort of said to our class, "Oh, go up and see how you find it." So I was like, you know what, it's a one-day event. I'm going up, and the people you have speaking at that, I don't know where you've got these connections from, but the people you have speaking at this conference to try to just to even chat, not even to make actual business acquaintances with them, just even chat, just pick their brain a bit is unbelievable. So do you want to give us sort of like a little sort of breakdown about, and then how it actually it came
Yeah,
about in general? Like,
totally, absolutely. So when I was, when I was in bands, I did like play South by Southwest and in the city, and and I go to a lot of music conferences and whatnot as well. And then when I started doing stuff like this, then I started being asked to speak at different conferences, and it's always like, I like conferences, always been kind of like up for kind of going and meeting people, interested in people, speaking at conferences. And then through various other kind of bits of work, had the opportunity to kind of set up. Been lots of people who had tried to do conferences in Belfast that were for music, and I'd seen lots of other models, kind of not only in the UK but in kind of Europe and North America and whatnot. And definitely like loads of things that I'd seen that were really good, and loads of things that I'd seen that I thought were like really poor or really kind of underpowered. So then I was like, okay, so like what does like the music community in Northern Ireland actually, what do they need in terms of a kind of conference and showcasing event? And we'd had things like Belfast Music Week, and I was always a bit like, oh, a week, really? Maybe it should just be like 24 hours, like just one day of conferencing, but like, like 80, 90 or 100 people flying in to kind of speak at the conference and do stuff. And then like one night of showcasing where obviously that kind of speaking audience, they then become the consumers for the music that's playing, the bands that are showcasing and whatnot. So just because of kind of sitting on this like apex between like composing and stuff like that, but then also like still have lots of friends who work in music and in the music industry as well, just like anybody else, just kind of reached out to people on a kind of ad hoc basis, and would always, whenever I was at other conferences and whatever, like be making little notes about, oh, that's a really good thing, or like, oh, we have to do something about like, streaming for radio, or, oh, we haven't, we did something about like worship music 5 or 6 years ago, because I don't know anything about worship music, but I know there's like a big worship music community in Northern Ireland. It's really kind of compelling. Or something, I don't know, something about folk or metal or jazz or avant-garde or modern classical or whatever. And then obviously I bring in lots of friends who work in sync or music supervisors or heads of music, which is brilliant. And, that's always like a strong strand in the conference. But then I think I definitely always think it's really important to have a strong creative songwriting, co-writing, publishing strand. Then also to kind of have stuff which is like for people who are, we did something last year about people working in the live sector. So guitar, Leonard Cohen's guitar tech, or, somebody used to tour manage 4 events. So sort of looking at like the whole of the sector in Northern Ireland, trying to do something that's as relevant for as many people as possible. Our closing keynote this year, absolutely straight up.
Unbelievable.
But well, it is, it's Sarah from the Screen Composers Guild of Ireland had brought him to Dublin to do an event with him down there, and I saw him. I was like, oh my god, we have to book him for Belfast. He's unbelievable. So it's like, always kind of find inspiration in other conferences and stuff as well.
And by the way, we are talking about a man called Peter Oxendale.
Peter Oxendale.
So, have mentioned him.
Yeah, forensic musicologist, probably one of the 2 most kind of eminent musicologists globally. Who did an amazing closing keynote. But we've had people like, Steve Albini, record producer, has done a closing keynote for us as well. We've had some like incredible people. So I suppose it's like the way I put together was in that completely subjective thing of like, what do I think is a really fit for purpose conference that will actually work for the sector here, then kind of like build it, benchmark it objectively with all my music friends in Northern Ireland and whatnot, and then kind of try and deliver it every year. And then for me, like, it is a busman's holiday from this stuff here. It means that like I get to see lots of friends, who come over, and everybody's so, great with their time. But the most important thing is it has to work for the sector. So people have to come out of it, at the end of the day and the evening and go, okay, I met, Keith from IMRO, and, Stuart from PRS, and, this, person who produced, whatever, and this, and then I saw these bands, and I kind of met, this person who works in PR, or like, oh, there's like Darren who manages Villagers, and he's now managing, this guy, and I met him, and then so there's got to be all that kind of like kinetic energy created within the local community, interfacing with all the people who come across. It's the kind of like, it's what powers people's development in the industry alongside kind of awesome creativity. So it's it's a bit like, it brings everybody out to the surface for one day, lets them see each other, then lets them meet all these awesome people, and then go out in the evening, and it's all free as well, which I think is really important.
I was about to say that, yeah, we hadn't mentioned that yet. This is free to attend.
Yeah, so like Belfast City Council, obviously, who are the primary funders of the Arts Council, put some funding in as well this year. Like, it really suits, as part of their kind of remit to see kind of Belfast creative industries really kind of energized. That's great as well, and people kind of network creation stuff as well. We're so lucky that it is free, but I think, I took like hand on heart, I think it's a really good conference and a good showcasing event, and I love doing it, even though I'm pulling my hair out.
I say so.
Like, oh my God. I remember meeting you on the day, and I was probably like, can't really talk right now, but hello, yes.
Yeah, literally.
But yeah, no, it's like, it's an amazing thing to do, and it's a real, everybody from Scoredraw gets involved. Like Mary introduced some, a couple of panels, and Charlie, did work on the website and whatnot, and yeah, it's a brilliant thing to do. But when it's done, I'm always really happy to not think about it for a while, but I can see in my desktop, a thing that says output 2021, which is all the stuff that I've already started putting in, as in like, this could be a good panel, this could be a good session, or we tried to get this person last year, but we'll maybe get them next year. So I'm kind of like always kind of thinking about it. I'll go on Twitter and I'll read something really interesting about, I don't know, publishing. I'll be like, oh, that would make a really, really good session. And I just kind of like file it away. And then I'll chase the person down in the autumn and see if they'll come to Belfast and hang out for a day. So that's it. Yeah. Busman's holiday.
Great. Yeah. No, I'd highly recommend anyone that can make it to Belfast. Cool. Is it always February, Mark?
Yeah, it's always February. Yeah. So it always tends to be, around the middle of February. Yes.
Yeah. So if anyone listening to this wants to go.
Yeah. So yeah, we try, sometimes we try and kind of align it with, things like colleges and stuff, so that we can get people to come from like Dublin or Derry, Londonderry, or, and sometimes it falls in people's half term and whatnot. And when we were kind of in the early years of doing it, I was more worried about, oh God, it's not how, people won't be able. But now I think like it's become well enough known that we've just got to like confidently book it each year and just assume that we'll get those kind of 600 to 900 people during the day, and that it'll just like, just work. So yeah, February. But I mean, next busy. Like, who knows? 2021, hopefully. We'll see.
Well, that is great to know, and hopefully it does go ahead, and I will be there. And anyways, 100%.
Oh, cool.
So the last question I just have to ask you, or even not even a question, more just let you to sort of sign off. Do you have any sort of projects coming up that you want to sort of mention for people to keep an eye out? I'll link Scoredraw on the sort of description of this video and everything that for people to check it out. But do you have any sort of upcoming things?
So what are we working on at the moment? So we are working on season 2, Pinklicious, which we're doing. One thing that we've been really lucky to do, it's one of the first big Chinese animation co-productions, an animated series called Deer Squad, 40 times 11 minute, which will be distributed internationally through Nickelodeon. Where I think we're about like 25 episodes into that, maybe. So that's amazing. That'll be coming out, I think, from the summer. And then just one other thing, I suppose. We met BBC Bite Size, who obviously do amazing learning stuff. And they had a brief about doing Key Stage 1 music, education, short films. And they were like, oh, and we were like, yeah, we'd love to do the music for that. And they were like, well, what about if you just produced them? And we're like, oh, well, we've done like, little things before, but we never actually like produced before. So we've done 5 or 6 5-minute films, live action films, 2 characters. We wrote the scripts, got a director, wrote all the music, obviously, songs and whatnot, and produced them. So I suppose for us, it's a kind of exciting thing because, we're composers primarily. Obviously, we do bits of sound design and kind of end-to-end audio work and stuff as well. But this is the first thing that we've actually produced, as in like a kind of original idea, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And just that'll be coming out in the next couple of months, and that's been kind of exciting, completely overwhelming. Again, yeah, I have more respect for producers now than I have ever done in my life before. Oh my god! But so that's quite exciting as well, to have actually done something end to end, not just the music, to have done the scripts, to have done the casting, to kind of put the whole thing together, and because it's music based as well, so that's cool. So we have that, and then 2 or 3 other animation things. We have various kind of development stages, just kind of like ticking forward. And then obviously, like everybody in the sector, you know, we've been talking about some kids live action stuff, and we're just hoping that will come around in the autumn or at the start of next year. And then this great game, Paleopines, that we'll be doing for all the rest of the year as well. So, yeah.
Great. So a busy man,
year.
a busy company, busy team.
Yeah, I know. Busy.
Well, I think I'll let you go, Mark. I hope, I enjoyed this chat, and I hope anyone listening has learned from it. I'm sure they have, because it's opened my eyes to a good bit of children's animation anyways.
Yeah.
A lot of work involved.
Yes.
So if anyone has sort of any questions on any of this, leave them in the comments of the video, and do try to make it up to Belfast next year. Search up Output Belfast. I'll link it in the description anyway, so you can see what's kind of gone on.
Yes, we're just about to do a new video for Output Belfast, so yeah, I'll fire that link up as well. Definitely,
definitely.
Which will explain it all.
Cool. So I hope anyone's listening enjoyed the podcast. If you do, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.